Today is November 8th, 2015, and on this day in 1897, the Sierra Railway inaugurated passenger service to Jamestown, California, sparking days of celebration and drawing a crowd of more than 2,500 residents from all over Calaveras and Tuolumne counties. Grading on the railroad began near the end of March the same year, and by June, tracks were laid to the fledgling station community of Cooperstown. By early October, the Sierra was open for service just outside of Chinese Camp. In just under 8 months, the company had completed its first phase of construction and the railroad was in business. While the Sierra Railway had been built with the intention of servicing the gold mines in the southern Motherlode region, carloads of supplies bound for local businesses and lumber milled in upper Tuolumne County were the main sources of revenue. It was only a matter of time before the Dreamers, Thomas Bullock and Andre Poniatowski, lobbied to build their railroad further east at Carter's to harvest the vast old-growth timber waiting along the Tuolumne River watershed and north to the rich mining communities of Calaveras County. Both the best of times and the worst awaited them. So the car you're looking at here is Sierra flat car number 33, and I started this project earlier this year about the same time I was finishing up flat car number 41, which is coupled to it. And then it got put on hold, mostly because I couldn't find the material that I was using to build the trucks, which is little bits of copper that I cut into individual pieces to solder together and form the side frames. But about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I finally got back to it. I found the material and finished up the trucks. It only took me about 4 days of work to finally get the car on the trucks. It's pretty much finished now. It's got the stirrups on the car corners. I've put on a fresh coat of freight car red paint, put a couple of decals on it, but it's not completely finished yet. And as usual, I still have to do the brake rigging, but the reason I haven't done any brake rigging in really any of my cars is because I'm not very familiar with how to put it together. So I'd like some assistance from a couple of friends I know who are pretty good at doing that before I go ahead with installing the brake rigging. But the car looks pretty good. It's roadworthy now. It's really nice to have more than one of an exact type of car. Because just that one token minority kind of car, I guess you would say, it's kind of unusual to have only one type of car in your consist. So I thought it would be really neat to have at least one more for now, and eventually I'm going to do probably 8 more of these exact type of cars, but I'm going to have the trucks casted next time. So I'm just going to make a master side frame and cast that and duplicate it and build the rest of the trucks that way. Should take a lot less time. So that's flat car number 33, so let's go on to the next show and tell item. And finally, the crowning jewel is back together. Sierra number 3 has been reassembled for the past month and a half or so, which is a great accomplishment by me. I'm really glad to have her back. She's running, she's operable, and I've actually got her running pretty well. Nowhere near as well as I'd like, but she is back in one piece, but there are a few details that I had to take off in the last, well, not details, like the main rod. I had to take off the main rod in the last couple of weeks because a section of it was damaged. And instead of repairing it, I figured, you know what, I'm just going to make a whole new main rod so I can kind of update the details on it, because believe it or not, the main rod does have a few details on it, like the brass bearings and just the profile of it. So I figured I'm just going to make a new one, because I recently made a new one for the fireman's side, and the engineer side is the one that's missing. So while I'm taking care of that, I'm also going to be making a new check valve for the engineer side, which has been missing, and that's why you haven't seen the engineer side really since the engine has been put back together, just because there are less details on that side. I have to put on the air compressor, I have to add the air tank, I have to put on the air hose. But so far things are really looking good, and I've even made a couple of additions to the locomotive, and you might notice a couple of little stubs on the headlight bracket, the base of the headlight, and that is for the flag holders. Those are the flag holders. They hold the little extra flags for when the engine runs an extra train. So I have those flags, but I took them out just because I wasn't able to find one of them, so I figured I'll just leave it bare for now. So the engine's been sitting for the last week or so. I haven't really bothered to run it. She is still operable, but I don't really want to run the engine until all the parts are back on. So she is really looking good. So let's move on with the next part of the video. Okay, so what we're looking at here is Sierra Railway number 30 taken apart. And the reason that I had to do it was I think one of the gears is worn out. The idler gear in there, just below the main worm gear. What I think happened was when I was cleaning the drive wheels on one of those brass wheel cleaners, you put the locomotive on it and it picks up power through the brass that connects to the track, and it cleans the wheels as the locomotive's in motion. And you just hold it in place. Anyway, my point is I think I pressed down too hard on it for too long, and I think it chipped the teeth on the gear. Anyway, that's what it looks like when I rotate it manually. So I'm going to replace the idler gear that's in there with a spare that I have. I have quite a few spares because I've bought a lot of parts from Bachmann, and also I have some other 060 engines that I've taken parts from that I've collected over the years. So hopefully this works, and well, I'll show you how the whole process goes. So I replaced the idler gear and everything seems to be working fine now, but the funny thing is I replaced the gear that I took out only a few months ago, and even with putting a little more pressure on it than I should, I didn't think that it would wear out that much. What I'm thinking is that the motor might just be too high, and that the gear is barely making contact with the top of the teeth as it is. So it probably just got to the point where the teeth wore out just enough for the motor to start slipping. I'm hoping this doesn't happen again, but if it does, I know what to do. I'll just take the motor out and lower it and replace the gear again. But anyway, I'm hoping that this problem won't happen anytime soon. Anyway, what was really happening that bothered me was, well, for one, the motor started working harder to move the locomotive. So it was a lot noisier, and it was making a really bad grinding sound, which the 30, she does make grinding sounds because I replaced the original motor so that it would fit underneath the new boiler. So it makes a little bit more noise because it's not the original Bachmann drive, but it wasn't nearly as noisy as it has been the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that was one thing. The other thing is, every once in a while it would completely freeze up, and that was not good. So the locomotive just wouldn't budge at all. And there was nothing wrong with the contacts or anything. So yeah, I absolutely had to get this fixed. The engine hasn't been running for about 3 weeks. So it's about time I got to do this. Anyway, hopefully once I put it back together, I'll show you in a minute that she runs all right. So the gear transplant was a success, and she actually runs very, very well. I've run her a few times already before I started filming here just now. She runs really well, and she went back together without any hiccups. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that little kind of walkthrough on how I repair my engines when something goes wrong. It's usually the same kind of process, but yeah, that was how I was working on the 30. So yeah, let's see what's next. so what you're looking at here is Sierra Railway number 28's progress so far. The base for this model is a newer generation Roundhouse 280, the old time 280, but this one was manufactured within the last 10 years. So it's got a new motor, and both sides of the both drive wheels on each side of the frame pick up power, or at least they're supposed to. But I'm going to be doing quite a bit of modifying to it to make it work for my needs, my operating needs. So I really haven't done that much work to it yet. I put the pilot itself and the deck plate in place, and then the pilot wheel is just kind of sitting there. I haven't made the actual truck for it yet. Over here is the start of the cylinders, and they're about halfway done so far. It takes a lot of time and patience to build these, and it's a little more difficult when you don't have Instaset to dry your glue faster, so I have to wait for it to set before I can do a lot of my filing. But it's coming along, and I figured this locomotive is not going to take nearly as long as some of the other engines I've been working on, like the 30 and the number 3. They took quite a while, but I'm not sure that the 28 is going to take so long, just because it's a more standard kind of locomotive. I have all the measurements I need, I have tons of photographs, so I'm pretty sure this one won't take too long. You'll probably notice that the drive wheels aren't the correct kind. They don't have the correct counterweights for number 28. It's kind of ironic. Number 3 has the disc, or not disc drivers, but it has the crescent counterweights, but the 28's drive wheels have the square counterweights. It's kind of opposite what they should be. But they are the right size. They're 48-inch drive wheels. So I'm going to use them for now until I can get replacements, probably from Greenway Brass or another company that makes drive wheels or other detail parts and whatnot. So I'm hoping that the locomotive will be for the most part completed by March or April next year, when the real locomotive number 28 is back in operation. It's kind of optimistic. I'm really hoping that it doesn't take too much longer. It took me a while to even do any kind of work on this thing. The tender frame is pretty much done. I just have to build a cistern for it and get that whole thing finished, lettered, decaled, and the tender will be pretty much done. It won't take up much work. But the locomotive, it's going to be a little difficult. I have to build a new boiler for it, completely out of styrene, because I don't have brass tubing big enough. I'm sure I could find some, but it would take a while for me to get a hold of any. So I'm just going to build it out of styrene instead and hope that it works. Okay, so it's been about a week or two, and here's how the 28 is looking so far. You can see the domes, and pretty much the entire boiler is finished. The headlight is missing because I took it off to drill the hole for the bulb to be fit into. I don't use LEDs normally. I like to use regular light bulbs because it has a more natural look to it. LEDs oftentimes are very light blue, or there's something about them that doesn't look like a glowing light bulb as a steam locomotive would have. So LEDs would probably be good for use in diesel locomotives or whatnot, but in steam engines I like to use light bulbs. So yeah, anyway, I'm prepping the headlight to install one, and then I'm hoping to finish up the boiler after that. The sand and steam domes are on, the air compressor, the running boards are all done. I'm going to have to make a few more adjustments before everything's completely finished. The cylinders kind of got bumped a little bit while I was doing all this other work, but I'll have those fixed, no problem. But she's really looking good. She looks like the engine. It's only been about 2 weeks worth of work. The tender frame has been just about finished. The only thing it's missing is the deck boards, and then I'll have to build a new tender cistern out of brass. I think I already mentioned that. One part of the cab, traditionally I make my cabs out of copper sheeting. I'm going to have to go get some more so I can finish working on it, but that's what I've got so far. So you can see the sand and steam domes are in place, the steam generator's in place, the air compressor, the handrails, temporary smoke box front because it's not the exact same kind as the 28 has. I'm probably going to get the smoke box front 3D printed when it comes time to install it permanently. But yeah, for 2.5 to 3 weeks I've gotten a lot done, and it helps that the tender frame was pretty much finished a few months ago. I just need materials to build the cab and to build the tender cistern and the oil tank. I have all my measurements. I've done a lot of measuring in the last couple of years. So hopefully by January or February I can have the engine completely finished and running. There's not a whole lot left to do. The next major parts, like I said, are building the cab, the tender cistern, and the running gear, which is, as I did with the number 30, is going to be scratch built as well. The next item I work on this project will probably be getting a bell for the engine, because that's all my engines have different bells. Just like the real things, they all sound different. And for my models I have different brands and different kinds of bells, so I'm going to go to Just Trains and pick up one of those Cal scale movable bells and put that on the engine, just to give it a few more details and a little more character and whatnot. Try to get as much finished as possible in the next couple of months. With any luck I can have the engine running in January or February, like I said, and have it painted and pretty much completely finished, or at least up to the point where number 3 and number 30 are at. And most definitely during the next Sierra Railway Historical and Modeling Seminar, the number 28 will be there in model form. And then of course on the Sunday we have arranged to ride behind the real locomotive number 28 if it's finished by then, which hopefully it will be. So yeah, that ought to be an interesting day. Well, anyway, here's your look at Sierra number 28 as it is right now. I hope you enjoyed watching my build progress in the last couple of shots. But, well, let's get on with the video. Okay guys, we're on our final stretch on this Shoptime vlog. This is the final segment, and this is where I kind of just walk around and give you a look at what exactly has been going on, just about everything I've been doing. And the most major thing you see here is that there's a big chunk of scenery base or dirt ripped off the module, and I got to explain that. I was having a big problem for a while with cracks all along the ground. In this area you can't see it for some reason. The stresses aren't nearly as bad as on that side, but I came to the conclusion that this module is just too flexible. There's not a lot of support framework underneath, which I am going to fix at some point. So instead of trying to fill in the cracks, I decided I'm just going to rip it out, start all over again, make it look more natural than trying to fix it and put things over it to disguise it. So I'm going to be putting some paper bag base down, which I haven't done on this module yet. I figured the foam base would be good enough, but no, I'm going to glue down some paper bag scenery base and put dirt on over that. And I did that on this section, and so far no cracks. So I'm going to try it over here and hope that it works, and it should. I'm not worried about it. But yeah, I'll hopefully be working on this in the next week or so, trying to balance my other projects, which I have a lot of, but I can only work on so many projects at a time with the materials I have before I have to go out and get more, and that's why a lot of them take so long. So yeah, I ripped out the crossing, and the tracks are all still in place. I'm not going to bother removing those, but I'm just going to try and work around them, and hopefully by the next Sierra Railway seminar this thing will be pretty much finished, or at least the dirt part of it will be done, and that's really what I'm hoping to get finished, so I can start doing static grass or shrubs and trees and things like that, which there weren't a lot of in the Jamestown yard because the Sierra maintained their right-of-way pretty well, or at least back then. So there's combine number 5 with the 2 flat cars, the number 33 and 41, which is pretty much the wrecking train for the Angels branch, because 80 years ago in October 1935, so 80 years ago last month, the number 30 was pulling 2 flat cars, and they were ripping up the rails from Angels Camp to Jamestown. And this is pretty much the wrecking train, 2 Sierra flat cars. So that's one of the inspirations behind finishing the 33, was I wanted 2 flat cars in time for the 80th anniversary. So yeah, that was fun, getting the 33 finally finished. And over here it's kind of hard to see because of the harsh lighting, but it's baggage car slash RPO number 8, the Sierra Railway Express car. And I haven't done very much with it in the last 2 years because I haven't had any material until recently to finish the flooring and make the doors and the clear story windows and all that. So I'm considering starting working on that again, and hopefully if I get moving, if I get enough done on it, then I'll be able to completely finish the car. I have a few more photos to work off of now, so it'll be a lot easier. Yeah. So stay tuned for that project. Really not a lot else has been going on. I already showed you the last major project, so I guess I'll give you one more look at the number 28. It's really hard to see over here. The lighting in this room is really, really bad, but yeah, she really is starting to look like the real number 28, and I'm really psyched out to have the engine this close to being finished after 3 weeks of work. And the really funny part is that this engine has not cost me a dime since I've started working on it. I have not paid any money to work on this engine this far. This is all with materials that I've had on hand. You know, trucks, drive wheels, the frame and everything. I've had this stuff for years, and I finally just started putting it together. Of course, by the time it's finished, it'll have a few dollars racked up in replacing the drive wheels and you know, other materials like for the cab and the tender cistern. But overall, this is pretty much why I do custom built models, is because they're significantly less expensive to build than buying a brass engine and, you know, a brass Sierra number 24 and trying to convert it into a 28. I'd rather build them myself. They're more accurate that way, they usually run better, and they're much, much cheaper. But not trying to toot my own horn here, you really don't want to tackle a project this extensive unless you really know what you're doing. It took me locomotive 3, 32, and number 30 to finally have the knowledge and experience to build the 28 in just 3 weeks time. So this is not for the faint of heart. Alright, so that's the Shoptime vlog this month. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. There's a missing segment, unfortunately, but I didn't have any new freight cars to review. And hopefully in the next Shoptime vlog, I will have one more and I'll review that. And, well, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this vlog, and well, I will see you next time. Today is August 31st, 2015, and on this day in 1938, the Sierra Railroad Company operated its last revenue passenger train, ending more than 40 years of rail passenger service to Tuolumne County.